I'm always amazed how one coach, one leader, one teacher can get more out of the students, more out of the players, more out of the colleagues than others. And it's a leadership thing. Proverbs chapter 9, verse 9 reads this way: give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still the wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. Today, I'd like to share a podcast with you that is really kind of dedicated to people. If you consider yourself somebody who is constantly learning, constantly growing, then I want to challenge you to consider what it is that I'd like to share today. I'm going to call it the God factor. The God factor. Let me go back. To the best of my recollection, my first rude awakening happened in the third grade. More specifically, my first day of the third grade. I remember it almost like it were yesterday. I started a new school. It was a public school in San Bernardino, California. For some reason, the name Bradley Elementary School is sticking in my head. Whether that's accurate, I'm not sure. Previous to going to this new public school, I was enrolled in a private Christian school. So here's what happened. While waiting for the lineup bell to ring, we kids were out playing in the playground, and I found myself in a Foursquare game. You remember that game? It's a little, round rubber ball, and you've got four squares, and you hit it back, and the person who misses the ball, is out. And I think I was always a pretty nice kid, but I wasn't always aware of the people dynamics around me. I wasn't exposed to a lot of different environments. And so in the process of the game, I ended up knocking out one of the boys in an opposing square. And apparently he did not like that very much at all. As he exited his quadrant of that bigger square, he simultaneously stuck his middle finger at me and shouted the matching phrase toward me. Now, I had never heard this gesture before. I'd never seen it, yet the vibes that I did receive from it were really clear. It was contrary, it was not positive, and it was meant to hurt me and apparently make him feel better. I'm not sure. I just thought he was a lousy Foursquare player. And this was my introduction to a less sheltered, shall we say, environment. Now I want you to fast forward with me. Let's go to the early 1980s. I am 22, 23 years old. I was an executive. I was an officer at the bank. I was young. I was green. I don't even think I was shaving. If I did, it might have been once every 2 weeks. And I was working for one of the largest banks in the world as a junior officer. As I said, I was in my early 20s, and I was now, adulting, as we say today. I was working in a adult environment, and for the most part, still pretty sheltered, still pretty naive. Now, most of the people I was supervising, and I'm guessing, remember, this is the old days of banking. We didn't have as much technology as we do today. So I was supervising approximately 50 people, 50 adults, of course. And, they were just like me. They were trying to make a living and enjoy their lives. However, the longer that I worked with this crew, I started noticing things that were different from my life. I started noticing some pretty unhealthy patterns of behavior. And a good number of them would come to work on Mondays late, specifically on Mondays late. They didn't look so hot. They weren't moving very fast. They weren't talking much. So I would sometimes catch them holding their head in their hands. And well, they had hangovers. And at that time in my life, I didn't even know what a hangover was. I am not kidding you. I did not know what a hangover was. I remember the game Hangman, and I had heard the term hangover, but maybe I was always too scared to ask, what does that mean? Because I might be made fun of that, Jimmy Piper did not know what a hangover is. That's not all. Over time, I saw relationships self-destruct into divorce and other like things. People cutting off people, so to speak, in the relationships, going to court with one another. Some were arrested for this or that. Some just simply couldn't keep their jobs. They got sloppy. That's how I would call it. They got sloppy. They got sloppy with their language, like I experienced on that third grade playground. Although, that language is almost becoming commonplace, or we've come up with other words to replace it that kind of mean the same thing. But anyway, I saw these people getting sloppy. And with their, not just their language, but their attitudes, their behaviors, and frankly, just their overall performance deteriorated. So here's what I learned. The God factor, as I began to study this in my ministry, my leadership ministry, and studying leaders and leadership is something that I just love to do. You don't have to make me do it. You don't have to force me to read books. You don't have to make me observe. I'm always amazed how one coach, one leader, one teacher can get more out of the students, more out of the players, more out of the colleagues than others. And it's a leadership thing. And I believe that the God factor, or the lack thereof, leaks into the behavioral systems of our being. I think that's how I want to say it. The God factor, meaning the abundance or the lack of a conscious belief and faith relationship that God is with me, it leaks into my systemic nature. Now, my sheltered and Christian upbringing may have made me a bit naive to the ways of the world. But after I was witnessing what I was seeing, why would I even want to know the ways of the world? It didn't look good to me. It looked pretty destructive. That's what it looked like to me. So my point, though at that time in my life, I was taking my life for granted, yes, but I had still been shaped in ways I did not realize. And as I said earlier, it created a faith quake in my life. It stimulated a newfound love for my faith, and I began to change. And without making this a Sunday school lesson, let me share what I mean, and I hope it will inspire you to consider my proposition. What is my proposition? My proposition is that, well, my goal is to encourage you to up your game with God. That's what I want you to do. To cultivate a God consciousness in your life, to include him in everything that you're doing. I'm repeating myself a little bit, but I think that's how and where a faith relationship with God starts. By faith, take a step toward him. Scripture teaches that if you seek God diligently, surprise, you will run into him. You will run into him if you seek him. So my proposition is this: people who possess a genuine God factor, people who are seeking after God, who are trying to catch up to God, if you will, they become better leaders. They become better leaders. They don't just become better people, they become better leaders. And we need better leaders at every level, at every single level. Let me pause for a second. I definitely believe this is true. Leaders with a God consciousness develop a foundation on which they can build not just a fulfilling life, but they're able to influence and impact and care for and lead and protect and guide and support and enjoy the people in their lives much better. On their first floor, the first floor of their building, the life that they're building, the foundation, they supernaturally, in my anecdotal perspective of experience, they manifest 4 unique qualities that are really available to all human beings, especially when that person pursues the Creator. Because when you do, you get exposed to the engineering of creation and how it works best. And these 4 qualities absolutely separate them, differentiates them from the general population and leaders and other leaders. So that's what I'd like to do with the remaining time is I want to talk to you about those 4 unique qualities. Now, as I put them side by side, I will say that they are cousins. They might even be brothers and sisters. In fact, in some cases, you might even be tempted to say they're synonyms. But as I list each one, I'll also explain what I mean by each one. So the first unique quality of people and leaders who seek God, who are curious about God, they have the quality of perspective. The first is perspective. When you have the God factor, you don't think in terms of the temporary life or the material life. When you have a God perspective, you think less about the temporary life or the material life. Now, you enjoy life because life is a gift. It's great. In spite of all the pain that it can bring to us and the difficulties and the obstacles and the setbacks, overall, we all know that life is a gift. And so we enjoy that life for sure. And we appreciate nice things. I don't know about you, but I love things. We use the word love too much. I know. I appreciate. Yeah, I like that. I appreciate and admire nice things because of the craftsmanship, because of the work that goes into it. I don't appreciate cheap things. Now, I understand there are some things that are disposable and we buy those things for that reason, but the things that we want around for a while, we are definitely looking for quality, and so we appreciate those things. But the material life and the temporary life is not where our head is. So you enjoy life and you appreciate nice things, but that's not where your head is. You are thinking eternally. When you have the God factor, you have an eternal perspective.